Hey guys, so tonight's episode we get into some subjects that are definitely problematic. And so this is kind of just a warning ahead before the episode starts that if issues like sexual assault or rape are sensitive to you or bring up issues that you would rather not hear about, that's understandable. And I would advise you to not listen to tonight's episode because the movie that we talk about tonight definitely brings up and alludes to some of those issues. This is 1933's Deluge. Um, yeah, I just wanted to kind of give a little alert ahead of time to let anyone who might be sensitive or might be um, not wanting to hear about those issues, that those issues will be discussed a little bit, not a whole lot, just a little bit on tonight's episode. And yeah, so thank you for listening and have a good rest of your day. Bye. I think.
Awesome. Yeah.
Welcome to the show. This is Welcome to the End of the World podcast. Tonight we're going to be talking about a very old movie from
Mm-hmm.
1933 called Deluge. Let
Deluge.
it wash over you. Deluge. Yeah, so a little bit well, first off, I guess how are you feeling today? How's
I'm
your
doing
day
pretty
going?
good. It's not bad. It's not been a bad
Nice.
day.
My day has not been the best, but
Yeah.
I'm still sick. If you listened to last week's episode, I mentioned that I was getting sick. Turns out, I got sick,
Yeah.
and it's been a fun little journey since then. So yeah,
Yes. That sucks.
yeah, I'm getting better though, I think.
Yeah,
So
that's
we'll
good.
see how it goes. So my voice might be a little off tonight, but hey, I'll do what I can.
Yeah,
So
whatever.
this this movie was directed by Felix E. Feast or Feist, which is a fantastic 1920s 30s director's name.
It really is.
My one question I have to ask you about him, what's your favorite Feist song?
Oh man. Put me on the spot. Because I don't remember the song names as it is.
That's fair. Mine is
Yeah.
Mushroom.
Oh, okay.
I just like
I
that
bet if
song.
I hear,
You've heard it before for sure.
I'm sure I have.
Definitely. If you were alive in the 2000s, you've heard Mushroom by Feist, I'm pretty sure. So Felix A. Feist he's a long-term working director. He directed all the way until the 1970s. This movie is from 1933. Um, he did a lot of TV shows. Basically, if you can name it in the TV show in the 70s, he might have directed at least an episode of it. Um, did a few movies in the 50s. Um, did a lot of shorts before and after this movie came out in 1933.
Yeah.
And this movie is based on a book. Did you by chance ever did you get
I
to look
did.
up anything about the book?
I did not.
So this book was written by a guy named S. Fowler Wright. It was actually set in the United Kingdom, not in the United States.
Oh,
And
okay.
like most flood narratives, it's kind of working as a metaphor
Mm-hmm.
about, like the destruction of all the things that are like evil or wrong. And so the book kind of presents the flood as kind of being like a cleansing effect, where what comes after is like a humanity that's more simplified, but also more noble and more honest. And we've kind of
Mm-hmm.
turned away from technology and the things that led us to the destruction, and kind of returned more to you know I like a communal living. I didn't read the book. I flipped through a little bit of it. It's like 300 pages long, and I was
Yeah.
sick.
Oh, yeah.
So,
It,
but I read a little bit of it, and I will say some of that's in the movie.
okay.
But if you just watch the movie, you definitely wouldn't think that there's anything like kind of a grand metaphor in play necessarily. The movie
Right.
doesn't really keep a lot of the nobilization of the humans after the flood.
No,
Um,
definitely not.
so the movie obviously relocates the book to New York City, and this is
Hmm.
the very first time New York City is destroyed in a movie in 1933 in this movie here.
Okay, now that I did not know.
Yeah, this movie
That's
actually.
awesome.
So, well, as we get into this movie, like it's not a very long movie. It's free on
It's
YouTube.
yeah.
Um, it's a little over an hour long, and most of that hour and like 5 or 6 minutes length of the movie is a lot of it is stock footage. Um,
Right.
Maybe like the last 20 or 30 minutes of it is actual like a movie, and the first
Yeah.
half is just kind of like an intersplicing of stock footage, but it works. I actually
I
kind of
was gonna
liked it
say
quite a bit.
I really did like it. Like visually,
Yeah,
I was all in.
yeah, it was cool as hell. Yeah, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
So the screenplay was written by two different guys.
Hmm.
John Goodrich, who was a writer in an interesting time in the Hollywood in 1920s to 30s, wrote a bunch of different movies.
Hmm.
Um, a lot of them I have never seen. A couple of them I did look up just because I thought they were interesting. I'm
Yeah.
going to share with you one of them, and you'll tell me if you think it's interesting. Um, this is a movie called The Last Command, and it was made in
Hmm.
1928.
Ooh.
And here's the premise: a Russian czar ends up in Hollywood working as an extra. So you would think that it's kind of leaning towards a comedy, right?
That sounds comedic to me.
It is not a comedy. It is played as like a serious drama, and it very much like horrible things happen based on
Oh
the
wow.
description online.
Oh, okay, that's going on my list.
Basically, like the Russian czar ends up like the guy that's directing him is like one of his former, I think like competitors. And yeah, so it's just kind of like about like this guy falling from like a high position of society to being this kind of lowly extra.
Oh wow.
So that's one of John Goodrich's movies. He
Hmm.
wrote a ton of movies. The co-writer of this movie was a guy named Warren Duff, who also wrote all the way until the 70s.
Hmm.
And one of the TV shows that he was the creator of. I've never seen this TV show, but I really would like to watch it. I don't know if I can find it. It's got a great name. It's from the 70s. It's called My Friend Tony.
My friend Tony.
My Friend
I
Tony.
don't know that.
So the premise is a college professor and a former orphan that he had befriended somehow. I didn't look into much how.
Hmm.
Um, they solve crimes together.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, they solve crimes.
That's,
That's it. They solve crimes.
there you
That's the
go.
premise. So some before we get into the movie, some more interesting things. This movie was considered a lost movie until 2016. They didn't there weren't a whole lot of copies of it available, and the ones that were available were not completed or were not in pretty damaged shape. So for a very, very long time, up until recently, you couldn't even watch this movie.
Oh.
They knew it existed, but they didn't have any more copies of it because you know a lot of times they didn't really save these things back then. You know, that's just not how they did things.
Right.
Um, and so I wrote down a joke here. This is my joke for
Hmm.
all of you liberals out there. This movie cost at the time in 1933 $171,000, which is now the equivalent of $4 million, or what Donald Trump pays for sex. Duh, duh, duh. There you go. So yeah, four
Nice.
million dollars. I tried to look up like what a movie cost in 1933. Lots of different numbers. That number is actually kind of like not too far off. It's on the high end, but it's not
Hmm.
on the super high end. For example, like Ben-Hur came out before this and it was
Right.
millions of dollars in 30s money.
Wow.
So there were other movies that came out before this movie that were already costing quite a bit more
Hmm.
than this movie cost. So, but it was an expensive movie for you know at the time. It was
Hmm.
the range I kind of saw was kind of like between like 120 to $190,000 is what a lot of movies cost.
Yeah.
That's not all movies. A lot of Hollywood movies at the time relied on shorts and they relied on B movies.
Right.
Because B movies were very cheap. They could film a B movie for like 20, 30 grand and they would attach that to a larger picture and you could go
Hmm.
and see both for like a nickel. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, this is a very different time when it came to movies. They kind of used the B movies to prop up and support the more expensive movies that
Hmm.
needed those movies to kind of help churn a budget. And so now you don't really see that so much. Now pretty much the only movies that come into theaters it seems like are movies that are you know big budget superhero movies or you
Yeah.
know your
That's
Christopher Nolan biopic that's gonna draw people in. Otherwise, it's kind
Mhm.
of a lot of stuff now goes to, direct to streaming.
Oh yeah, which I find I enjoy those movies more, the ones that
Yeah.
go streaming. You know.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. I haven't gone to an actual like movie in a long time. It's
No,
an
it's been.
embarrassingly long time. I love movies. I watch a movie pretty much every day, but
Hmm.
I just it's also partially where I live, but it's mostly the cost. Like it's just really expensive and
Oh,
there's not a
it's
whole lot that's like, yeah, I want to go spend the like 50, $60 for me and my wife to go to the movies and have a good time to go see something that we probably aren't really going to enjoy.
yeah,
Like it's
and
just
in a room full of like who knows what is going to go on in that room. Like
yeah,
people are going to
exactly.
be on their phone, or they're going to
Oh
do
yeah,
you know
yeah, yeah.
lights on their
The
phone is going to
last
be going.
movie experience I truly remember was going to see one of the Star Trek movies. I don't even remember which one. It was one of the newer ones where the Beastie Boys song was in it. I remember that. And
Mhm.
I remember the entire movie there was like a guy in the back just like on his phone. It was
Oh
infuriating my
Lord.
friend that I was seeing it with. It was very fun. So,
If this wasn't the
oh
last
god.
movie I saw, but I remember a while back, me and Frank went to see. This is really going far back. That last Airbender movie they did that was
Oh yeah.
awful.
That movie
Because I
sucked.
remember, yeah, the highlight of that movie for me. We watched it in 3D and everything, but the highlight for me was just Frank leaning over to me every now and again saying they fucked this up. So that
So
I
the
liked that.
our main cast in this movie is really just three people. Before we
Hmm.
really get into it, and all three of them had really interesting lives. So I kind
I
of went down a
agree.
rabbit hole for some of these
Oh, like the
actors.
actors?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah, the actors. I have a weird fascination with like old vintage Hollywood actors and just like
Hmm.
learning more because almost all of them had such horrible, destructive lives. Like they were,
Oh yeah.
these people were not treated like you would imagine Hollywood is now. Um, so our one of our main girls, Arlington, the swimmer,
Hmm.
is played by Miss Peggy Shannon. Um, she was at one time considered to be like the next Clara Bow.
Oh.
She had very bright red hair. She was a very striking figure.
Hmm.
However, her career was largely derailed by alcoholism, and by
Ah.
34, she was dead.
Oh no.
Um, yeah, she died very, very young. Yeah, you and I are older than she is.
Yes.
We both have outlived her. Her epitaph on her gravestone says that redheaded girl, which I thought was
Wow.
kind of interesting. Yeah, and her husband also. Her husband was even. It's a horrible story. So like, her husband is off working. She is an alcoholic. He knows this obviously.
Right.
He goes to work and he comes home and she's dead. And
Oh.
I think like just a few days after he's able to bury her, he kills himself in the exact same chair in that he
Oh.
found her in. So like yeah, it was one of those very, very
Yikes.
tragic Hollywood stories.
Yeah, no kidding.
Um, the other female in the movie, because there's only two, can't have more than that,
You're
was
right.
was Lewis Wilson, who was in a good amount of movies in the 40s.
Yeah.
Kind of, she lived to be 93, so
Oh
kind of the
wow.
flip side of
I
the
was about to
30s
say.
actress,
Yeah.
where she just kind of kept doing things here or there, nothing huge, but consistent actor, worked until
Oh,
she
that's good.
was worked until she got much older. The male in the movie, the main character, Martin, is played by
Hmm.
Sidney Blackmere. Do you know of any movies he was in? I think you might have seen one of them.
I might have, but I don't. I didn't look him up. So
He was in Rosemary's Baby. He plays
no
the kind
kidding.
of the bad, yeah, like the big bad guy in Rosemary's Baby.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. He was also in Bonanza. He was in a ton of stuff in the
Oh,
50s.
okay.
Um, he was actually in the 30s. He was in another really good 30s movie that we watched in film school called Little Caesar. That's a really good movie too. But he
Oh,
was mostly a stage actor. He appeared
what
in a ton
was
of stuff. Won a
what
Tony at one point.
Little Caesar? Is that about making pizzas and stuff?
Yeah,
Or no? Yeah,
it's about
yeah.
the horrific world of pizza gangsters, and you'd be surprised how many people you have to shoot to make a pizza. It's remarkable these days. That's not tomato
It's
sauce you're enjoying.
there you go. It's
Yeah, they get that marinara from the straight from the tap. So the
amazing.
most interesting thing about him is this guy made a career out of being almost like the guy. So he was in a bunch of plays, and a lot of those plays were turned into movies in which the actor won an Oscar for. And in almost every single time, he was largely considered to be the actor that was going to take that role.
Uh,
Um, because so I was looking it up, and I thought it was interesting that like when Hollywood switched to talkies, like when
mhm.
talking became an important thing, they had to go scoop up Broadway actors because those were the actors that knew how to talk and how to project their voices and how to
Right.
actually like read dialogue and control a scene. And so they had to go scoop up those actors, and that's kind of how he gets involved in Hollywood. Is he's a stage actor who Hollywood comes a calling, and he also, like I told my wife, I mean, they basically elect him president of the settlement at the end of the movie because he's very clearly the most
Yes.
handsome out of all of them. And it's very clear. Like the rest of them
Oh,
are
it
like
was.
presented as bums and slubs, and he's just like got like slicked back black hair, like very
Hmm.
Hollywood, very Hollywood. But had a very successful career, but I think he probably could have been definitely more successful, but didn't quite get some of those big
Yeah.
roles. Um, the writer of this movie hated this movie.
Yeah. Right.
So
But
let's
yeah,
go
no,
ahead and get into this thing, I guess. Oh, go ahead. What you
absolutely.
to say?
Well, I was gonna say no. I see that, and I want to check out the books now because I didn't look at the writer at all in
Oh, I
this.
went, yeah, like I said, I've been sick, so I had some free time
Oh
on my
yeah.
hand, and I fell down a little bit of a rabbit hole with this one, especially.
Oh.
So the movie starts with a warning that this is a work of fiction, so don't be alarmed, kids.
Hmm.
Don't be alarmed. This is a complete work of fiction. We follow that up with a reference to another work of fiction in the Bible, where we get the Genesis flood narrative, another joke for you liberals.
On all
Um,
cylinders.
And then after we get our two warnings, we kind of get told, like, first off, this is a work of fiction. And then we get a reference to the Genesis, so we kind of know we're getting into flood narrative territory right away.
Hmm.
For those of you unfamiliar with the flood narrative, a flood narrative is, in just a simpler terms, it's a writing device that has appeared in virtually every civilization in one shape, form, or another, in which the world is flooded and very few people are left alive. And the few people that are left alive have to kind of rebuild or reshape society.
Hmm.
You see this in virtually every religion and every culture. It's one of those
Gilgamesh.
Gilgamesh, the Noah.
Hmm.
It shows up in Greek culture or in Roman
Yep.
culture, whichever one you want to say. It even shows up in some, I think, whenever I was remember going back a while. Sorry, my cat is screaming at me. If you hear him, I'm
Oh yeah.
sorry. His name is Guillermo del Orange, and he is a conquistador, but he's also very loud, and he really wants me to hold him right now for some reason.
Yep.
Um, so going back to like some of the classes I took, I'm trying to remember. I think even like some of the like Icelandic and Arctic cultures and civilizations, even they in their mythology, their mythos have like a flood narrative.
Hmm.
And so these cultures are all very, very different in ways, and yet they're all kind of same presenting this same story of the world ending via a flood, which is
Yeah.
quite timely with all of our rising sea
I
levels.
was about to say
Yeah, it rained all day today here. It was lovely.
we had that this weekend. It was nice. We don't
Yeah.
usually get that here.
So the movie starts and we get a lot of stock footage. Stock footage of
Hmm.
different ships, of different towns, hurricanes, just infinite stock footage, overspliced and
Oh,
interspliced sometimes
yes.
with images of people warning the public, newspaper
Yes.
clippings. My favorite part was this is no cause for alarm, but you should be alarmed,
Yeah.
which I thought was hysterical. I was like, this is
Oh
great.
yeah.
That's great. Hey, so this is not really an ad. I'm not being paid for this or anything. Just interrupting the podcast to give a little shout out to some people that I really enjoy. Um, if you're wanting to refinance your home or looking to buy a home for the first time and you live in Tennessee, Arkansas, Mississippi, or Texas, then you should really look out Mortgage Financial Services, especially the lender Miranda Noland. She's really wonderful. She's getting started in the business. She's very knowledgeable, though, and she's also very friendly and helpful to everyone that she works with. And she will go above and beyond to help you and just give you information about what you need to do to get a home, what steps you should take, even if you're not necessarily ready to buy or if you're looking to refinance. That can be something that's difficult for people who have never done it before or and need some assistance with that. So she's great with that. Her NMLS ID number, that's hard for me to say, is 256-7401. One more time, that's 256-7401. And you can also look her up on Miranda. That's MIRANDA .mortgagefinancial.com. And thank you so much. Have a good rest of your day and continue listening to the show. Bye. So the town, we get all these warnings. The town is being destroyed. And we meet our family of Martin and his wife, and they have their kids. Martin is unsure of what to believe about this warning, so he tells his wife to rush the kids up to this quarry, so he gets them to safety, and at the same time he runs back to his house just in the nick of time as his house collapses in on itself, and his wife is trapped. He lifts up because he's a big, strong Hollywood leading man. He's able to lift up the structure and rescue his wife, and he rushes her back to where the children are, and dropping her off there. And then he runs back to the house to get the belongings, and just as he does, an earthquake separates them, and he's no longer able to get to his wife and kids anymore. So we think that presumably they're dead, but yeah, we're not 100% sure. And we find out a little bit more about what's going to happen as we get introduced to more characters that have survived the aftermath. So yeah, the swimmer is swimming to this new island, and she
Hmm.
gets there running away from the men that are trying to rape her. Martin says he's going to protect her, and they end up falling in love.
Yes.
But all is not well because the hillbilly that wants her, he has followed her to this island, and he runs into
Yeah.
his own little gang of rapists,
Yeah.
and basically,
Real lucky for him to find another group of ne'er do wells. You know.
yeah, it's important at the end of the world to have friends, and he definitely has found them with his group of rapists that he's
Yeah.
befriended. So you know, he's having fun. That's important. That's important. So the swimmer and Martin, they hit it off. They get a little hot and heavy. She trusts
Hmm.
him only because he's blindingly handsome. He
Right.
is the most handsome person in this movie by like a country mile. Everyone else looks like a complete schlub, and him
Totally.
and the girls both are all like Hollywood, and everyone else
Hmm.
looks like a bunch of hillbillies.
They look like you would look at the end of the world, but then
Basically,
you've got these sparkling, shiny
yeah.
Hollywood looks.
And I think she identifies with him because he doesn't immediately try to rape her.
Yeah,
He plays it slow.
which is
He
a
tells her,
virtue in
yeah,
1933.
it
It
was
turns out.
very virtuous 1930s as a man to not just immediately be like, "Hey, I'm going to rape you now."
Yeah, this
That was apparently par for the course at the time. It seems like, and kind
very
of
progressive.
maybe
Oh, that
not
was
too
going to
far off
happen.
from modern men, honestly.
Yeah, really. There, but
Present
for the
company
face.
excluded.
Thank
But
you.
yeah, hey. But yeah, so she runs away from him, and she finds Martin, as we've said, and her and Martin hit it off. They fall in love, and this kind of sets the basic drama of the movie is that the rapists are after her. They want her, and
Hmm.
they want his supplies that he has.
Yes.
He is presuming his wife is dead, and his
Hmm.
children are also dead. He hasn't seen them. He doesn't know where they are. Turns out though, he hasn't really been able to explore this island he's on much, because if he had, he would know that the rapists are actually the throwaways from a settlement that has sprung up not that far away from him. A few miles,
Not that
obviously,
far at all.
a few miles. A good walk, right? A
It'd be
good
a good
walk.
walk.
Yeah, a good walk. And in that settlement is his wife and kids. So they
Yep.
are alive. And in the settlement, the big problem going on there is that they all these laws are being passed because they're having arguments about rations, who's going to get what. And they've
Mm.
decided if you're a woman, you got to get married. And so they're trying to convince her husband is dead and she should just remarry someone here.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, the settlement is like, we got all these rapists out in the woods out there, couple not that far away, that are just causing all kinds of problems. So
Mm-hmm.
there's kind of like a war that's gonna brew up here between all of these different factions.
Mm-hmm.
And well, it culminates with her, the girl, the swimmer, she gets kidnapped.
Yes.
Martin and her are canoodling on a tree, and he gets
That's
snuck up
right.
upon and gets whacked over the head by the big hillbilly, who takes the girl, and she goes and there he's gonna have his way with her, but she actually is able to defend herself and get away from him,
Yep.
and so I thought that was interesting in the
Yeah,
1930s that she
really.
largely saves herself,
Yeah, that was pretty fresh.
which is interesting when you get to the end of the movie when we find out
Yeah.
that it doesn't quite go all the way through with her having some agency.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know. It depends on how you read the ending of it, I guess.
Yeah,
But
that's a good point.
so there's a fight in the tunnel. He comes to her aid and helps her. They survive the night, but they know that the hillbillies are going to come the next morning, and so they have
Mm-hmm.
a big fight. And they basically are able to save themselves and defend off the entire hillbillies, but they do get helped a
Yep.
little bit by the settlement, who
Yeah, because
shows
at
up in
that
the
time
nick of
they
time.
decide. Yeah,
Yeah, the
they're
settlement.
gonna. Yeah.
Yeah, the
So.
settlement decides to come, and that they're also at the same time gonna they were already having issues with these rapists, and they're going to come confront
Mm-hmm.
them anyway. And it just so happens that they're already having they think it's infighting. Turns out it's not. Like, these are two different groups.
Yeah.
They show up. They don't know this guy, and they don't know her from,
Mm-mm.
Johnny Come Nobody. So they're like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
you guys want to come along? Come
Yeah.
along. They get them back to the settlement, and Martin and the swimmer are like, oh my God, this is beautiful. I did miss out a part. So when Martin and the swimmer are meet the settlement,
Mm-hmm.
he does introduce her as his wife,
Oh, that's right. Yeah, because
because
that.
he kind of gets vibes of like, are these guys gonna also be rapists? Like,
Uh-huh.
if I say she's not my wife, are you just gonna be like, oh well, she's mine now? Or,
Yeah.
so he kind of presents that she's his wife, even
Mm-hmm.
though that's not exactly the case. But up to this point, they've definitely, been interested in each other and have
Absolutely.
showed some large some romance,
Mm-hmm.
that's been a brewing, as the kids say.
Yeah.
So once again, we got ourselves a little bit of a pickle, because
Yeah.
as he gets to the city, who does he find within seconds? His
Uh,
motherfucking kids.
those little.
Those little fucking bastards. I thought they died. Nope, not dead. Somehow, some way, they survived. Just like the children of the corn, they always survive.
Right? Exactly.
And so now he's got these kids, and it's too late to abort them. So he's gonna have to support them in some way or another. And so he decides, he thinks about it off screen, because we just get a slice cut, and now he's
Mm-hmm.
talking to her, and he's talking to the swimmer, and he's telling her, "Yeah, my wife and kids are here, and I'm gonna go back with them.
Mm-hmm.
What we had was beautiful, but I think I want they're my wife and kids. How can I
Yeah.
say no to my wife and kids? I'm Damon Wayans." Um,
And he does
but
still say that he loves her, like
he
he's
does
still,
love her.
yeah.
Actually, so he kind of does a little bit of a Tommy Dreamer at the end there, because so she kind of convinces him he doesn't go full Tommy Dreamer. Are you familiar with the reference I am making?
I am not familiar with this
Okay,
reference.
so Tommy Dreamer was a wrestler in ECW. He had a rivalry in ECW where at one point he was presented with two different women, his wife and another girl that he was interested in, and he famously said, "I'm gonna take them both. I'm hardcore," and then they like do like a three-way kiss in the ring. He
Oh,
doesn't.
okay.
It doesn't go quite that way here, but
Yeah, I was gonna say
he
this.
definitely
This was.
says like, "I'm not going to choose between you."
Yeah, he
So
does say
like
that.
I'm refusing to choose between you. And so he
Which
kind of leaves it up to the women, which is an odd choice to
is
make for this kind of a
very,
situation.
very
You
odd.
know, it's not like we're deciding who's going to get Chipotle. Like this is
Yeah.
people's lives here. So an interesting
The
choice.
See, and I figured that is one of those. I thought about this as I was watching. I was like, well, this really is something that, like, modern day convention, they could just be a throuple.
Yeah,
It'd be fine.
yeah. In modern day, yeah, it'd be fine.
Yeah.
You pull it off. But then, couldn't. That'd be, he's not hardcore enough. He's not Tommy
See,
Dreamer.
that's the thing.
He's not Tommy
I'm gonna
Dreamer.
have to look that up now.
Yeah, definitely. It's on YouTube. I'll send you after we get done.
Yeah, there you
So this is happening and you're thinking like it's building to this like dramatic conclusion. Not
go.
really. There's like 7 minutes left in this movie. It's
Yeah.
almost over. So he Martin realizes that the town is basically run by morons who couldn't run a fucking
hmm
target. So he decides that he's going to take over, and they basically elect him the person in charge because he's
Yep.
like handsome
That's.
and
I mean, that's enough for
like
me.
can kind of think. Like he doesn't really introduce anything that's all that like novel. The movie
He
gets
has
a
a good
little
little
racist with
speech.
the Venus de Milo thing,
I
and
was about to say, like, great representation of a person of color on there,
yeah,
but
a
the
little racist.
lines weren't great.
It's
Yeah, I was like,
1930, it is 1930.
but I will say
It's not
he
Birth of
was
a Nation, but
exactly.
we're
I
not
will
far
say
off. We're not far
it
off.
was a tad progressive because he was. They didn't have him like separate from everybody else. He was standing among the other men.
He was. He was. He was. He was. He
So
was. This is
if
true.
nothing else, like I'd like to take that away from it. I'll give
They
them.
so they have like a little auction off of like
Yeah,
random stuff that they have, and one of them is the
and
Venus de Milo.
yeah.
And I think the guy that buys her is gonna fuck it. I
I
don't
think that's
know.
the implication.
That's definitely the implication. He says, "Y'all know what I'm gonna do with this," and I'm like, "I
And everybody
don't."
laughs, and it's like, no,
Are you gonna fuck that
no.
statue?
Like, I think
Because I
that's
don't. I'm not sure how that's gonna work out for you, but
it's gonna be a bad time.
it doesn't seem like it is going to. So he's the most dreamiest. So he's elected the leader. The swimmer, Penelope, is that her name? I can't remember
Um,
now. I wrote it down.
yeah,
Arlington. Arlington.
yeah.
She's played by Peggy Shannon though. So I'm just gonna call her
Right.
Peggy.
There
So
you go.
Peggy sees this, Peggy the swimmer, as we've called her so far. She sees this. She sees the town, like embracing him and his wife, and oh,
hmm
everyone loves him. He's now the run leading everything, and it's great. And she can't take it anymore, so she runs to the edge of the island that they're living on
hmm
and strips down. That does not show any nudity, but it does get very close to showing nudity for
It
1930, which is
does.
interesting.
Yeah.
I thought that I was not expecting that to be like that close to nudity in
Yeah.
1930.
Really.
Yeah, I was like, oh shit, like okay, this is not what I was expecting. Which is a lot of what this movie, I guess you could say, is
I
this
think
is not what I
there
was
was a lot of
expecting.
yeah that happened a lot.
Yeah, it definitely goes some places. And then and this is where the movie kind of ends with a little bit of kind of how do you read it. So I'll ask you
Yeah.
when we get there. She decides, at this point, she had already met with the other woman, and she had told the other
hmm
woman, like, I can't live without him. I
I
refuse to live
yeah
without him. And so neither girl is really budging here.
yeah, and
And then,
that was a real interesting scene.
yeah,
Definitely doesn't pass the Bechtel test, but
no,
whatever.
no.
Yeah, because they're only talking about him. So,
Yep.
but it was interesting how the wife was a lot more just I don't know, even
Yeah.
keel about it, like very very mellow about the thing.
Yeah.
But then you had the swimmer, which was very much like, no, I couldn't be like that. I'm gonna fight, and that's just all there is to it. Like it's either
Yeah.
I'm it or it's nothing.
Yeah. She's
And that was
basically
very interesting.
Yeah, she basically tells her like I can't live without this man. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
if I can't have him, then I want nothing at all. Which is how you get to the end of the movie, which we were just
Mm.
talking about, where she strips down nude and she just swims off.
Yeah.
And so the implication is she's swimming to maybe another island, or maybe she can find another man, but
Mm-hmm.
is she also just swimming endlessly to kill herself? The movie
Yeah,
kind of
it's
ends a little bit of there, and I mean it ends there. Like as soon
it
as she
just
starts getting gets in the water, he sees her get in the water and swim off, and credits, and that's
yep.
it.
And
Like
that
it goes to
was
credits fast.
I thought I did something wrong whenever that happened. I was like, did I skip something? What did I miss?
No, no, that was pretty much it. So, yeah, that's pretty much the entire movie.
Yeah,
Altogether, I took it to be that she kills herself at the end, that
that's
she can't live
fair.
without him, and that which is kind of, like I said, a little bit of a kind of annoying considering how much agency she has in the beginning of the
Yeah,
movie,
really.
and then towards the end of it, she expresses none, and she's like, "Oh, if I can't be with him, I just need to die." It's like, eh.
Yeah. It's
I
just
feel
a
like
real
you
turnaround.
yeah, I feel like if this movie was made today, there would be definitely more. In fact, like this movie kind of was made. Like if you think about it, this movie has a lot in common with the movie Day After Tomorrow. Um,
Oh, okay.
like there's a lot of similarities between these two movies.
I might have to go
Like
back and
not
watch
only
that
in
one.
how Day After Tomorrow kind of reuses some of the destruction of New York City scenes,
Oh,
but
okay, yeah.
also like thematically and like and the way the movie is kind of also like a romance, like because Day After Tomorrow is also kind of like this kind of like romantic movie, and you get so yeah, the movie kind of ends in that moment, where Day After Tomorrow kind of also has like a lot of romance as well,
Mm-hmm.
where it kind of the movie is kind of secretly a romantic movie without necessarily presenting itself. It's presenting itself as being like this sci-fi epic, and it is, but
Right.
really the movie's about like these relationships and how they're kind of
Mm-hmm.
forming, and that's kind of what this movie is about as well. Like there's not really that social commentary. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the men afterwards are just as bad as men before. Society is doesn't improve. You kind
Right.
of see them like rebuilding, but it doesn't really give you enough context for what they're rebuilding, that
Mm-hmm.
it's any kind of social commentary or anything like that presented here.
Yeah.
So the movie doesn't really kind of play into what the book does, but it's not a bad movie. I thought it
No,
was
I
okay.
enjoyed it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for an hour, for like a little
For an
over an hour
hour,
long with some pretty good special effects.
I was gonna say
Um,
very impressive stuff. Like,
Honestly, like the
especially.
first like 20 minutes of the movie are basically just stock footage
Mm-hmm.
and people talking over stock footage.
Yeah.
And then the movie kind of gets into the characters for like the next 20 or 30 minutes, and then we get into the main kind of drama, which only
Mm-hmm.
lasts about 20 or 30 minutes, and then the movie's pretty much over.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't, it kind of has like a very formulaic process to it, but it
It
works,
does. But it works.
so at the time when this movie came out, it had pretty mixed reviews. A lot of people were kind of like how, not thinking it was the worst thing ever made, but thinking it probably
Yeah.
could have been made a little bit better.
Right.
But honestly, for like a 1930s movie, like
Yeah.
it's not that bad.
No, I
It's
was
not that
real
bad.
impressed by a lot of what they did, and
And not that
uh,
1930s movies are bad. I don't want to say that. Like
no, no,
I
no.
love old movies. It's not
Oh,
that they're all bad. It's more of that like you kind of go into those movies with a certain expectation of what it's going to be. And I feel
mm,
like this movie subverted a lot of those expectations in some of its presentation of relationships between females and
hmm,
males.
yes,
Its special effects for 1930 are really interesting.
yeah,
Um, and some of the on-screen things that happen that you would not expect. Like there's a near rape. Um,
yeah,
there's almost nudity. There is some on-screen violence, like people are getting
mm,
shot and hacked. Like there's some stuff that you definitely probably wouldn't expect to see in a 1930s movie if you've only kind of seen some Charlie Chaplin and
yeah, really,
things of
some,
that nature going into
yeah,
it, because it's definitely not necessarily that. But for a good old 1930s sci-fi movie, I thought it was
mm,
pretty fucking dope.
I liked it a lot.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Well, I think that's where we're going to end tonight's episode. Another fun time at the end of the world. corral.
Yep.
I don't know.
Oh, I did have a tagline for this movie, which is basically
Yeah.
at the end of the world, women just stay away from the men.
Basically,
It's
yeah,
you
yeah.
know
That's I think that's the big takeaway you can take from this movie is if the world ends and you are of the fairer sex, uh, just kill every man you
just
meet.
yeah,
Just
exactly. Yeah,
kill
just
every
it's
single one of them because you can't
it's
trust any of them. They're
no,
either gonna try to rape you or take you and make you their second wife.
yeah, exactly.
And
Like
I don't really know. That's kind of the movie kind of ends with that way up in the air.
basically,
He's very upset that she's swimming away. He was very much like, "Hey, I thought we
let's
had a
start
good
this
thing going.
polycule. Come on.
Let's get this thing going here." Like, but yeah. So that's kind of where we'll end tonight's episode, which is
Yeah,
a shorter episode than we've done before, but not feeling
it was a
super
pretty
hot.
short movie.
And it's
Yeah.
a short film. It's not like I said, it's not super long. So,
No.
one thing I did want to we did have a hidden episode or a lost episode before this one where we talked about briefly about how many people have listened to the episode so far.
Hmm.
And I just wanted to repeat that part because it kind of did get lost in the last one. So
Oh
far, we've
yeah,
had a few episodes come out, and both of those episodes have had over 100 listens now. And that's
blows
just
my mind.
really, yeah, it's really cool. Thank you guys so much. If
Yeah.
you've subscribed, I think there's almost 50 people that have subscribed, and that's really cool.
That
Uh,
is cool.
yeah, keep on keeping on. I'll
Yeah.
think of a better catchphrase, but I thought that was really neat and worth talking about, and just
Heck
for
yeah.
just a moment. I think next week's episode is going to be an interesting one. I also think that we should end this week's episode by talking about what we're going to talk about next week. And so I
Oh.
have created a little bit of a random number generator here,
Ooh.
which will tell us which of these movies we will watch.
Ooh, I'm
And
excited.
so I'm going to roll a little die here and roll. That's drool. Roll a die. 5. Okay.
Five.
Well, looks like we will be watching the
A deadly virus capable of contaminating the entire world has been released.
Oh my god. We have to get out of
lovely
this
video
building.
game movie of Resident Evil.
Oh, I've never actually seen that movie.
Oh Lord. Have you ever played the game?
I played the game way back in the day.
Okay, okay. Well, it's nothing like that.
Okay, so
Go into it with those expectations.
so I shouldn't expect the camera to just change in a really bad angle all of a sudden while they're walking along.
No, I didn't say that.
Oh, oh,
No, I didn't say
okay.
that. It is not necessarily a good movie. It is
Well, I
the
think I know
one
a
of the
little bit about it.
yeah,
When
Mila
didn't
Jokovic, Paul W.S.
didn't
Anderson.
yeah, I was gonna say didn't yeah they're because they're married and he directed, she
Yes.
led.
Yeah.
Okay,
She's in a bunch of his movies. She's
I was gonna say yeah, that's a
the Fifth
thing.
Musketeer and the Three Musketeers, something like
Yeah.
that. I don't know. She's in that movie too. She's in all of his movies. Not all of his movies, but most of his movies. She would have been fucking
Yeah.
Sonya Blade if they were married when he made Mortal Kombat. But
Oh yeah.
you know, it's not the worst of his movies. I would say that the first Resident Evil movie, at least from what I remember, it's been a while,
Hmm.
is a decent little time, and it only gets better or worse from there, depending on how you view those movies.
Yeah.
But yeah, next week we'll check out Resident Evil
Yeah.
and look at how that movie presents an apocalyptic future. So we will see you then,
Nice.
and see you next time, guys. Bye.
See you next time.